Fostering connection through vulnerability, the People Pleaser podcast validates struggles, celebrates growth, and inspires positive change. Together, let's embrace authenticity, challenge patterns, and evolve with compassion. Hello, and welcome to the People Pleaser podcast. This is Corie, your host, your friend, your people-pleasing pal. Today, I'm going to try something a little different, and this is something that's been on my mind for a few weeks now, and it's the decision to share a piece of writing that I submitted for my ethics course that I'm taking right now in my Master's of Counseling Psychology. The intention of the paper is to explore my personal values, and it goes on to tie those into how my values will intertwine with the ethical code of conduct in the counseling profession. But I thought that I would just share the first few paragraphs of this paper where I explore my relationship with privilege and I introduce 3 of my core values that seem relevant to this podcast. So without further ado, I am going to dive in. It's become a running joke in my family that I am a rule follower. One year, when I was about 10 years old, my parents tried to surprise my siblings and I with a stay in a hotel. This was pretty out of the ordinary for my family, as we'd been struggling financially just after my little brother was born and my mom was in school. My parents acted as though they had found a key to a fancy hotel while we were out on a walk and suggested to us kids playfully that we go and check it out. I remember being horrified as both my brother and sister and my parents seemed so excited to trespass into someone else's fancy hotel room. I dragged my heels for the rest of the walk and was so distraught by the entire situation that my parents eventually let me in on the secret, that they had actually booked the room and it was actually ours. This scenario is one I still find myself coming back to, as I still experience a lot of discomfort when it comes to straying away from the seemingly ethical and correct path. I found comfort in rules, and these structures have over time become associated with a sense of safety and doing right. I've always looked up to people in positions of authority, whether that be my parents, teachers, coaches. I remember being deeply impacted by the police officer who came to my grade 6 and 7 classes to teach us about the DARE program, the drug awareness program that was really popular in the 90s. So much so that throughout high school, I actually aspired to become a police officer myself. As someone who has struggled with anxiety as well as people pleasing, my belief and understanding is that following the rules or doing as I'm told will lend to positive outcomes. I've often found myself looking to others to make sense of myself, which applies to the development of my own sense of right and wrong, or what constitutes a good choice. By looking to others for examples, I've grown accustomed to abandoning my own sense of knowing. It's become difficult finding clarity on my own values and beliefs, as I still feel inclined to make sense of the world through others. In areas as complex as personal values, it can become really confusing to apply other people's beliefs to your own, as they are endless and often oppositional. My cultural and social identity as a white, cisgender, able-bodied, heterosexual female coming from a middle-class Euro-Canadian family has afforded me great privilege. I've maintained a sense of safety and support in my discovery of right and wrong. I've had access to education, safety on public platforms. My voice is listened to and respected in different social settings. I've been able to travel and gain perspectives on different cultures and way of living. I've not been profiled or targeted. My basic needs are consistently met, allowing me the privilege of time and space to consider my sense of right and wrong and where my beliefs lie within the spectrum. The privilege of my identity also allows a sense of safety within rules and laws. I innately feel a sense of protection from police officers and lawmakers. My experiences and associated privileges have facilitated a belief that there is a right and wrong, and that individuals with privilege and power can and will uphold the overall sense of right and wrong. My privilege has come for free. It's not something that I've earned, and it's not something that I'm proud of. But it would, however, be irresponsible to not name the ways in which I have benefited from my experiences of privilege. I'm working through the personal process of acknowledging and naming my privilege, which counters my previous approach of simply pretending it isn't there out of shame. My privilege is not to be confused with what I think I deserve, nor what I necessarily agree with. My privilege has, however, shaped the innate ways in which I interact with the concepts of right and wrong, and I have a responsibility to that recognition. As I mentioned previously, I can lean heavily into people-pleasing behaviors, manipulating the ways I show up in effort to be palatable to others. My people-pleasing has cleared the path towards complacency, where I found the most safety in shoring up against both sides of an opinion or argument. I have been fearful to vocalize strong and potentially divisive opinions, as I have worried about the ramifications of having an opinion that could potentially oppose someone else's or cause unintended harm. 3 of my most important values are integrity, community, and gratitude. I understand these values as a path towards the person I want to be and the spaces I want to co-create with others and the environment. The value of integrity speaks to accountability, being who I say I am and doing as I say I will. Integrity is the act of following through and staying morally upright. To value community means to value connection and shared experiences. Community fosters a sense of collective knowing and belonging, fostering cohesion and unity. Gratitude is a reflective value of expression to ourselves and others. Gratitude has the strength to build connection and community and embolden experiences and relationships. That is all I'll share from my paper, and it can feel really vulnerable to talk about something from, I think with this piece of writing, I'm talking about a topic that is actually really hard to talk about. And it's not necessarily something that I've had the opportunity to grapple with in real time with others. These are sort of inner narratives that live within me that guide a lot of my decisions, guide a lot of my internal struggles, sometimes my internal sense of empowerment. But I think it's something that I really do want to just put a pin in is the piece around people pleasing and how a lot of the time I have felt that my people pleasing has been cowardly, and it has been an effort to not cause any wrinkles, any upset, to just keep things smooth. And I am learning that this has come at a tremendous cost. It's come with such an overall feeling of suppressing my feelings, like my real feelings. And it's actually been a way of controlling others and controlling the narrative. And I think that because my values are that of integrity, community, and gratitude, those are almost like acting as tools of accountability. Like, if you truly do value integrity, community, and gratitude, then I need to lean into those and I need to actually practice what I preach. It's one thing to value these things from an intellectual, like, oh, I value the idea of these, but am I embodying these values? And I think that people pleasing can really cut in and disrupt these values from becoming real, becoming like actualized. And I know I'm kind of talking in heady, airy terms right now. So let's see if I can break it down a little bit more concretely. I think community is a big one. Community to me means like a network that you are a part of. And it's not just one entity, it's dynamic. So right now I'm looking at my community as, I have my work community, I have my downtown core community of like customers and people that I'm kind of becoming acquainted with downtown. I have my school community. I have my close friends community. There's like varying communities that I am a part of and affiliated with. And if I bring people pleasing into that community, into that sense of community, I'm actually not showing up authentically, and I'm actually coming in and controlling other people or trying to control other people to make myself comfortable, to make myself feel safe. And, just a really quick example is yesterday at work, there was a new person training, and I was really conflicted with how to show up without some anxiety, without like feeling like I really wanted her to feel at home, like she belonged, like she was doing well. I just wanted to embrace her so wholeheartedly right away. And I think a lot of that is genuine. Like, I think a lot of that is like wanting to create this helpful, supportive work environment, wanting to be of service. But it's also like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I want us to just fast track to her being comfortable so that I can be comfortable. And none of this is malicious. This is just like me being analytical to the situation. But it resulted in me being pretty on edge all day because I was trying to manage the entirety of the experience. And in that, I was trying to manage things that I had absolutely no control over. And I had to actually, in real time, have these moments of like checking myself. And I'm grateful that I was able to do that. But for me to try to mastermind these dynamics involving multiple people in, this dynamic environment is just too much work. And it takes me actually out of just being present and out of, I think like I had good intentions in terms of like trying to build community, but I also don't think that I can puppet master community into fruition. And I do think that like being accommodating and being helpful and being welcoming and all these things are great parts of building community. But I also just noticed that my people pleasing had a role, and it was kind of like coming in and cutting through and getting in the way of what authentic authentic relationships and authentic community building could really look like. I think integrity is another really interesting one to look at through the lens of people pleasing because, what I wrote in my paper is that integrity speaks to being who I say I am and doing as I say I will, the act of following through. And I think that sometimes I can take that almost to an extreme in my people pleasing where I am borderline trying to be like a perfectionist, like trying to be that to a T without like just showing up how I truly am and putting just this extra pressure on myself, putting extra pressure on the entire situation where I'm striving to get like a 10 out of 10 every time. Um, so that's one that I think I do well, but I kind of do it on like super drive, like overdrive, taking it a little bit too far. And I need to trust that I'm doing a good job just showing up with ease and just being present and being curious. And that one I think I can loosen my grip on a little bit. And gratitude is one that I'm having a bit of a hard time with, if I'm being honest. In my 5-minute daily journal, there is an opportunity to reflect gratitude. And I think my scope of gratitude is so narrow. And I'm looking at like the day-to-day, like good things that have happened to me. And I almost am recognizing some selfish patterns in my gratitude. And it's not because I'm like trying to be selfish or trying to be like all about me. What is it? I think a lot of it comes from this like idea that I need to be so attuned with like self-preservation and self-protection. And I'm like always building a case that like I am okay, that I have that what I need, that people like me, that I am accepted, that I'm comfortable, that I'm cared for. And it's like sort of this narrow-minded, selfish way of looking at gratitude. And I think that's coming from a place of like low confidence. And like I have this almost like embarrassing. I'll just tell you what it was. So also in my 5-minute journal, I actually stopped writing in it for the past couple of days because I'm like noticing certain patterns that just seem like I'm just like me, 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 me. And I'm almost getting sick of like talking about myself in that way. And I'm like not quite able to widen the scope and like think a little bit more outwardly. So at the end of every day, you can write something that you learned. And when I first started working at the cafe that I work at, on one of my first days, the owner's dad who works there, he came up behind me while I was at the espresso bar and I was steaming milk. And I put the little pitcher of milk down and he looked down and he said, nice foam. And that day, when I was filling out my gratitude journal under the what I learned today, I wrote, I make nice foam. And I have been replaying this in my mind daily, where it's like it's like I'm so starved for validation and recognition that I'm taking that and I'm like, where can I shove this? Where can I put this accolade? Where can I put this accomplishment? Where can I put my trophy for nice foam? Oh, well, here's a spot in my what I learned today section of my 5-minute journal. And I guess like what I'm feeling right now is like I'm noticing that I'm so like I'm acting as if I'm so starved for validation, for recognition. And I'm actually like sometimes I feel like I'm a bottomless pit. Like there's no amount of validation and recognition that would be enough to fill me up. And then that leads me to think that, well, maybe that's not it, and maybe it's not about these external sources of validation. It's internal. It's like having a connection to my own self and validating myself and being like internally able to give myself that assurance, give myself that pat on the back, letting myself know that is good foam and carry on. This isn't a thing. This is just a fleeting positive interaction, and it doesn't need to symbolize like I've been accepted, I'm good enough, I belong, and all these things. And I know this probably sounds like such a silly moment, but the fact that I caught myself is actually the moment that I was like, wow, it's as if I'm like so in need that I'm going to just like create this huge meaning behind this small moment. And sometimes sometimes small moments do have big meanings. And I think that what I'm experiencing right now is like, I don't want that moment of someone saying, "Hey, nice foam," to have that much power to like mean that much, because it indicates that like I'm at a deficit for compliments or validation or recognition. And I think that a big symptom of people pleasing and this low confidence is that we very often or we've for so long, or in so many cases, put the needs of others before ours and batted away recognition, batted away compliments, validation, all these things. And now we're at a deficit. Now we're like kind of hungry for it or starved for it in a way where we're seeking it out in like these silly little maladaptive ways. I hope that is making sense. And I'm also just really aware that I talk about these specific examples in my own life. And my hope is that there are opportunities throughout these shares that are inviting you in to reflect on your own experiences of people pleasing or your own self-reflection, to just know that you're not alone in these moments of like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing this? So I've been struggling with gratitude. And I think the struggle is just like getting over myself and being able to look at something like gratitude from a less selfish vantage, looking at collective joy, collective gratitude, like looking at other things that bring me joy that are just like not even about me. And that's kind of a hard thing to do. I think that I do have these moments of being self-absorbed, and I don't think I'm alone in that. And I don't think I'm being too hard on myself either. It can be, yeah, I think I've actually also had just a lot of time to reflect, and I have been really happy that I've been bringing more people into my life, and I've been around more people, and I've been able to have opportunities to like hear from other people and become immersed in other people's worlds, and not be so like in my own head all the time. But alone time can do that. I've also just been mindful of like information that I'm consuming and trying to just make sure that things are just in check, just balance, that I'm not overdoing it or underdoing it. I think it is an interesting reflection to be curious about our values and the role they play in our lives. I think my values tell me that I am seeking things bigger than myself. That can be pretty abstract. But to me, that means that there's like so many ways of finding it. It can look like pretty much anything if you allow the rules to be fluid or the parameters to be endless. So I feel like this was a bit more of a philosophical discussion, which there's no real clear way of how to wrap up this conversation, but I am going to wrap it up. And I'm really grateful that I have this platform, and I know that I spoke about it, but to be just explicit, like having a platform like this and having listeners tune in is a tremendous privilege. To have the equipment and the technology, to have the time to be able to put something like a podcast out is a tremendous privilege, and it's not lost on me. I think that naming my privilege is one thing, but using it for good is something else. And the more privilege you have, the more opportunity you have to do good things with it. So that is something I think about often. My hope is that this podcast is useful in some way. And I have a commitment to use my privilege for good in as many ways as I can. And it feels good to just say that, but I know that it'll feel even better to do something about it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'm sending you so much love.